Good evening, everyone. Next up, and ladies and gentlemen, is the CEO panel, the most awaited panel of the evening. And it's my honor and privilege both to introduce you to the CEO panel. Do nice leaders finish last? I think that's the question that we're trying to debate on today. This conversation will be through bold reflections, personal experiences, and while preparing my script for this particular panel, I was counting the number of years of experience the panel members have in all, and I stopped at 170 years. Okay, I'm not counting mine as yet. If I count mine, it'll be 200. Again, to start the conversation, I'm going to invite Nishchae Suri, who is the Managing Director of Cornerstone OnDemand, a visionary leader in leadership development and HR transformation. Nishchae has been at the forefront of shaping future-ready talent strategies across industries. Nishchae, please, I welcome you on stage. Joining Nishchae for this CEO panel are three remarkable leaders. And I guess I won't shy away from saying that it's a fanboy moment for me to introduce them on stage. These leaders have carved out exceptional careers and navigated through the challenges of leadership. And we've all seen them in action. I have been very fortunate to see them in action myself. First on stage, I would like to invite Mr. C.P. Gurnani, a man who needs no introduction. A big round of applause, please. Little louder. Thank you. CP is the co-founder and vice chairman of an organization. He's also the ex-CEO and MD of Tech Mahindra for over one and a half decades. Next up is a gentleman who I've looked up to and had the good fortune to work with. I now invite on stage Mr. Richard Rekhy, who is the vice chairman of Thornton, Bharat. Welcome on stage, sir. With decades of experience in global consulting and governance, Richard is a passionate advocate of empathetic leadership and building leaders for tomorrow, who are driven by, Richard, your favorite word, higher purpose, and committed to leave behind a legacy. A big round of applause for Richard. Next up on stage, I have Mr. Ashish Saraf. Ashish is the VP and country head for Pratt and Whitney. Ashish is a dynamic leader in the aerospace and engineering industry, known for driving purposeful and innovation and precision leadership in a highly complex industry. With that, Nishchae, I hand over the panel to you for an insightful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Muninder. Congratulations to Anuranjita and the team on the 5th edition of Spark. I will start with a little bit of trivia. So, everyone familiar with Moolank as a Hindi word, Moolank in numerology, or the number 5 is meant to be a very lucky number. And I'm sure that your good fortunes will now triple here on. You said you've been growing and doubling your revenue every year on. I'm sure it's going to bring you even more luck going forward. This is also my 5th appearance, and my date of birth also adds up to number 5. So hopefully I shall bring a little bit of luck to you as well. It's also a lucky day for all of you. I'm sure you haven't come across a more illustrious panel. And it's your lucky day that you've got 3 very distinguished speakers on the panel today. Now, interestingly, when I reflected on the topic for our discussion, do nice guys finish last? Actually, it was nice leaders finish last, but the origin of this catchy phrase dates back to the 1940s. It was actually a baseball manager that coined the phrase, and he was the manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, and he was making this comment looking at the New York rivals. That was the team that he was actually referring to. And he says all the good guys and the nice guys are seated there, and they are in 7th place. Now the question is, does this phrase equally apply to leadership? And what is the modern interpretation of this phrase? The 3 key words, operational words to really discuss today in our panel. For one, empathy. The second one, authority, and the third, impact. And when we talk about empathy, empathy is being human. Well, the question is, when you overindulge in empathy, does it actually slow you down in taking bold decisions? Secondly, authority is really about giving legitimacy to leaders. But now, given that hierarchies are flat, and do you really in that scenario have to earn authority, or do you actually demand it or give it? And finally, impact. Can nice leaders truly deliver results, or do they come in last? I think that's when the rubber hits the road, that's the question that we really need to answer. Now we've got Ashish, CP, and Richard, and through their own lived experiences, their own storytelling, we will engage in some of the healthy tensions that exist between empathy, between authority, and impact. And what I'd like to do is start with a question, with a show of hands here. So how many of you believe that you have or have had 2 nice leaders as your managers? Raise a show of hands. So you're in the minority, but clearly, I guess, if I just removed the word too nice and I said nice leaders, would the show of hands increase? So let me rephrase that question. Again, you believe that your managers are nice leaders, nice people? Again, very few. Okay, good. We'll have some healthy discussions here. So with that, let's dive in. And I've actually, our panel is divided into 3 acts. The first on empathy, the second on authority, and then finally on impact. And let me start with empathy. There's one central question, and then we'll have a free-flowing dialogue. That's what we're going to do. Here's the question on empathy. So empathy is essential. We said that empathy is required to be human, but it sometimes can blur the lines when tough decisions need to be made fast. How do you stay empathetic without compromising on clarity or speed? That's the question that we're going to spend a few minutes on. Let me start with you, Richard.
So, my entire life has been in consulting. I'll give you a story from one of the firms where I worked earlier. That was Arthur Andersen. And I'm going to tell it through a story. There's no point throwing words around here. Of a real life story that I experienced or went through. See, empathy, if you don't have empathy, you need to ask yourself, are you fit to be a leader? First, I will put this question to anybody. Because as you go up the value chain, you need to be a good people manager or a good with people. I had this very difficult job. I didn't know it was difficult because my boss told me, we had to exit. So in Andersen, what used to happen, if you became senior manager, your next thing was partner. And if you became senior, almost assured you're going to make it to partner. And there was this one person who was not performing at senior manager and he told to go. And this was never done, ever in the firm in India. It was never done. And my boss told me, I've spoken to him, you just go and thoda usko settle kar do uske saath. You just go and speak to him. So when I went to him, he said, nobody's told me. Now, I am there, stuck with this guy, very senior person, many years in Andersen, and he's saying, nobody's told me. Now, I had to get prepared for a dialogue with him as to how to put it across to him. It was one of the most difficult, on-the-spot kind of discussions you had to have with somebody. You're not prepared for that discussion. You're starting from ground zero. But I'll tell you what happened at the end of it, and I'll make 2 stories to combine the whole thing. So then I told him that because in Andersen, people were paid very highly, much more than the market rate. So this guy said, if you tell me to go, that means I will be 3 years back in my life. If I get another job, it will be like what I was getting 3 years back. I'm not going to resign. Clearly told me I'm not going to resign. So I had to go through the whole discussion with him and make it very, very graceful as to how he would leave the firm and how we would do it, because it's the first time we're exiting somebody at that level. So how to, make him not feel unwanted. He's still in touch with me, by the way, after many years. And I then referred him to a book, Who Moved My Cheese? I said, life comes out with things, and we went through the discussion. Finally, he agreed with me that he will put in his resignation and he will move on, but to give him a month's time before he wants to think through, talk to his wife, etc. The second one was also a similar one. That happened at KPMG, where I had to ask a partner to move on. And you know what, at the end of it, he told me? He's saying it was not a great discussion. It was not a great message you were giving me, but you never made me feel small. In fact, I loved the entire discussion. A guy being asked to leave, a partner being asked to leave, he felt it was a good discussion. So I think it's so it's all about the care. You can take the tough decisions, but how do you convey it? How do you are you honest? Are you truthful? Are you clear in what you're going to speak? And that message needs to come out very clearly. And all these people who went, they've all gone and done well. Exactly what I told them. I said, somewhere else you'll do better. And I always find people who may not work in a particular ecosystem maybe do better in a different ecosystem. Some of them may not, but I've seen in most cases. So we should not shy away from taking. Leaders need to take decisions. You see, there is something known as known knowns. It's the first risk you face. And most leaders kick the can down the road. Take the decision, it comes to hurt you later on.
Two very important takeaways for me specifically. One, how you say what you say is very, very important. And the second one that for me it resonates, Richard, is never delay taking a decision when there is a problem, because then it becomes a catastrophe. So act in time, I think, is equally important. Now, interestingly enough, you took, the examples you gave were all letting go of people. And while they were being let go of, they were still feeling good about themselves. I think they were feeling, and a big part of leadership is how you feel in their presence. So let me come to you, CP. With all the layoffs in the IT sector, how do you balance decisiveness with empathy in that situation?
The first part was what you started with, which says, do nice guys finish last? In my opinion, it's only the nice guys who will come first. There is no way that in an organization, and I don't understand that why when you ask for raise of hands, there are very few people who either did not admire their leaders or did not believe that the leaders were nice. Because, there is no way that any organization can flourish, any, ecosystem can flourish unless you are nice to each other. Unless your integrity, the way you build trust, the way you build relationship, unless you are able to keep that up front, there's no way you can practice leadership. My own take on leadership is that I always learn leadership from a mother. Now, of course, it is all diapers and God knows cribs and whatever. But the time when my kids were growing up, the kid would be sleeping on that wet, the rubber mat. Now, my wife would move, if the area was wetted, into a wet area, but she would make that sacrifice. To me, leadership is all about parenting. So, if you simplify it, whether it is empathy or taking decisions, If you start behaving like a parent, tell me which parent does not want the best out of the children, which parent does not go through the stages of love and encouragement and coaching and at times scolding, and during my time, even a slap. So my point is very simple, that organizations are just a better format of what we live in. We want the organization to be successful, and we will use whatever tools are available to us, which is as a parent to create a better environment and at times practice tough love.
I want to be provocative. I think the question of parenting itself has been redefined over and over again. I think, in families itself, I think mothers and daughters would argue about how their grandchildren, the grandmother telling the daughter has a different way of raising their, her own children. In organizations, it's even more complex, given that there could be competing priorities, number one. Everybody doesn't look at the world the same way. And I guess the construct of a family itself is hard enough to manage. Forget an organization. So coming back to my original question of when the IT sector has done these massive layoffs, how do you balance empathy with decisiveness?
So I can only give you, I'll try and borrow a page from Richard and be anecdotal. I still remember one of my general managers had come from a public sector background. And, in those days, there was an appraisal system which says, forced curve or the bottom 3 to 5% were asked to leave. Because you wanted a meritocracy, you wanted a certain amount of competitiveness. On one end, you were only hiring. On the other end, you give this 3 to 5% forced attrition. And so this young man comes to this general manager and says, why am I in that list? And that time the answer was, you should have joined Government of India. You want 3 times the salary, but you don't want to, pay a price because your performance is not up to the mark. Now my point is very simple. It's not that I'm trying to advocate any style of management here or any forced curves or anything. My point again is coming back to the word tough love.
Yeah.
For the benefit of 95 people, will I carry 5%? The second part, anecdotal part is, most of you know that I went to become the CEO of a company called Satyam. And because it was one of those companies which had 20% excess employees. So if I inherited 50,000 employees, there were 10,000 more because the market used to calculate revenue on the basis of revenue per employee. Now I go there, I know I have to get rid of 10,000 people. Now, did I do it? It was the Lord's year when the Lehman crisis happened. Obviously, I had no choice, but I made it easier. Made it easier is by reducing salaries of those 10,000 people to a certain extent where they could meet their they could meet their grocery bills. Second thing is, I still kept them on the payroll. Number third is, I still made sure that they have access to learning, development, and emails. But at the same time, I didn't want those 10,000 people to piss in the pond. So I kept them in a separate building completely. So my point is that you had to balance empathy with tough love.
Lovely. And actually, here there are 2 key takeaways again. One is balance. Ultimately, every situation demands the right balance. And there's no fixed formula for that. The situation will require you to use decisiveness and empathy in that right proportion. The second takeaway, act in the greater good of the organization. So when you're always looking at the larger picture, then these decisions become more rational and objective versus one-sided. Let me come to you, Ashish, on again this unique balance between empathy and when you overindulge in empathy. So let me ask you the question: when you have been in a situation, personal situation, where you've overindulged trying to be more compassionate, understanding, and you've had to pay a price for that.
Yeah, I'm going to take a slightly modern approach to this, right, with Gen Z, etc.
Sure.
So that part of the crowd is also represented,
right,
in terms of thoughts. So just a very recent example. So I have 22. We have field service representatives. There are hundreds of engines flying in the field. And sometimes there's a defect or a glitch, so the aircraft becomes on ground. And when an aircraft becomes on ground, obviously the airline doesn't like it, because when does a $170 million piece of equipment on the ground, it should be flying. So a 22-year-old field service representative had to be shipped there to figure out what's going on, etc. And that was the day, it was his girlfriend's birthday, so which he had said before, and then he had to travel there the same day. So he says, how can they do that to me, right? I had told that, and obviously now there's a situation, so I have to be there, but she's coming here, etc., and there is no way. And Gen Z, they don't think twice. They basically say, look, I'm going to get pissed off now, and in a week you'll probably see him saying, look, this is not going to work, the culture is not good and whatnot, and you basically just throw tantrums, right? Great performer, by the way. So empathy comes in. We said, look, this is what's the situation. Why don't we fly her with you there? Right. And we salvage the situation. When there's an aircraft on ground, you do anything to salvage the situation, right? And yeah, sure enough, obviously following the procedures, exception, approval, whatnot, we fly him there. He's super happy. He spread the word around. He said, look, they took care of me. This is what happened, and so on. And suddenly we kind of now, the organization, the leadership, etc., is a hero in his generation, not in his mind, but in his generation, saying that, look, now we are so empathetic, we are going way beyond our means to make sure that we are taking care of people, etc. So the point is to just build a connect, be very authentic about it is the whole point. You don't want to be and the organizations today, empathy is taking more and more center stage, according to me, is because there is more anxiety, stress, mental disorders, etc., surfacing up because of the dynamic nature of the world, the world we live in, the world around us, and the organizations that are changing so fast with the business environment and so on. So, again, with the show of hands, I just want to make a comment that you end up working for leaders at some point. You don't end up working for the organization. And that's why when we see leaders moving out, taking the whole team along with him or her, because, it's ultimately the people who you make the connections to, the people who you connect to, they give you the opportunity to grow and learn and mature. The organization is basically at the behest of the people.
I think after CP and you have spoken specifically advocating for leaders being nice, we can have a show of hands now. I'm sure many more hands will go up. Your managers are nice people. A show of hands. I think
how many of you have worked for nice managers, right?
You made the case.
That's the whole point.
One key takeaway, again, it's about balancing employee expectations with organizational expectations. So here you're seeing decisiveness with empathy, really balancing both the individual's needs and the organizational requirements or priorities as the example. Let me move to Act 2. And this is a good segue to authority. Again, back in the 1940s, very interestingly, there was this gentleman called George Orwell. Anybody heard of the author George Orwell? He wrote this book called The Animal Farm, right? I studied Animal Farm in school, and that's how I discovered that book. And there was this quote in The Animal Farm that said, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And that brings me to authority. Now, all these gentlemen are very accomplished, seasoned chairmen of boards and CEOs of many companies that they've held these positions in a boardroom setting. So here, let's do some role playing. We are now in a boardroom setting. And in a boardroom, you're the designate chairman for officiating this meeting. How do you, in this setting, lead with conviction without shutting down conversations in that boardroom? So you've got your team, you know that there is an urgent decision to be taken, and now you're balancing, again, speed with decision making that is required in authority. And I'm borrowing from the same saying, all men are equal, but some are more equal than others. So you're in this situation. Any real examples? Richard, I'll start with you. No, I'm going to start with you.
So I think when you are the boss or you are the CEO, chairman, whatever, you should speak last. Because if you speak first, you've already communicated whatever is there. So when you are sitting in a boardroom situation, it is good to listen to everybody in that room for 3-4 reasons. Number one, the rest of the people in that leadership meeting or board meeting are feeling empowered that they are being heard. Number two, they may say things which you have not thought about. And what's the point of hiring smart people if you don't give them the space to speak, which may not be exactly what you're thinking. It could be very different, could be very divergent to what you're thinking. But you're sitting there listening to these different leaders speak, each one coming from their own point of view. The one very important point is where people feel, when you have a very dominating leader, people feel scared to speak up. Because is it a career limiting move if I say something which is against what they want to hear? I think leaders need to provide that safe space. Easy to say, not easy to implement. But I think leaders need to provide that safe space where people can talk, can do it. In fact, in my view, if you have a dominating leader, a very dominant leader, actually it's high risk to the company. It's very, very high risk. Because that person doesn't listen to anybody, just does what they feel, and all the rest of the people, then why did you hire them? Why you, like what CP was saying, why do you pay them all those salaries? You can just have a one-man army, and the rest all workers. So I would say that listen to people, and after everybody has spoken, you could go around the room and ask anything else, and then you should say what you want to say, what you want to communicate, but factoring in what you heard. So you made everybody speak, but did not take anything into account. It's as bad as not giving them the right to speak. So I would say, then you factor it in and take it. So I think leaders need to, good leaders need to be good listeners. If you can listen more and speak less, I think your decisions, because ultimately it's about carrying, managers manage things, leaders inspire, leaders motivate people to do things. So I think the more you're able to carry your team, you're able to carry their decisions, I think they'll be more motivated to give their best to you. So I think you, in fact, to get the best out of people. That's my view.
Very well said. And I guess nobody will argue against everything that you've said. I want to actually ask for a situation, much like Napoleon fighting with the Germans or whoever else was participating in that war, where they basically were leading through instruction, right? Going back to the situation where you need to be dominant and decisive because the situation demands. CP, can you think of a situation where you entered the board and said, this is what we're going to do? And how did you do that?
So let me first react to Richard for a minute. I mean, Richard, your prescription is almost like a textbook. Textbook on active listening, textbook on, leading from the rear.
Yeah.
And I think it is an impractical situation in life. The reason I'm calling it impractical is, I know you are a consultant and you have developed vision statements of the company by listening to 100 people, and we're probably having 10,000 word vision statement. Because that's how it will come out, now, if you listen to 100 people. If a Steve Jobs had created Apple by only listening to the democracy, he would have never created an Apple.
True.
So I am very clear that there are areas where data speaks, there are areas where people speak, and there are areas where an individual has to, in a way, be the visionary and put his own stamp out there. Now, I am sure there is no one uniform cut to any of these.
True.
That means at different times you play different roles. For example, if you are running an operation, whether you call it a war or anything, there has to be one decisive leader. Attack at 10:36 a.m. He's not going to ask people 10:36 a.m. or he's not going to go an astrologer to ask for 10:36 a.m. He has to decide when is he going to do the strike. Similarly, when you are, let us say, doing an acquisition, and let us say you are participating in an auction, that time intuition and data both have to play. Same Richard in a same consulting role would say pay a little more. The data would say, this is the fair valuation. And why would a Richard or a CP take a decision in that situation to pay more? It's my intuition that 2030 the market is going to grow this much. This is what the data says, but I think the data is wrong. Number third, when I say in operations, you typically want the people who are on the shop floor to take that decision because you want them to own the decision. You don't want to thrust it on them. Let us say, for example, the same example we took of empathy, where the wage bill is 20% more than what we can afford. Now, would you take that decision that which 20% to go? Would you take that decision which 20% salary cuts to be imposed? Would you take that decision, or would you ask your divisional heads and departmental heads, this is the budget I have, how do I make it work? Because you want ownership from the individual. So all I'm trying to re-emphasize out here is that we all play different roles at different times, and it depends on the situation what role we would play.
So situational leadership again. And you're again inviting, you will act and take the balance of empathy, decisiveness, dominance depends again on the situation. I think Richard's point was you invite the wisdom in the room because you've hired, I think the philosophy has always been that the CEO has hired a team which is much smarter than him as an individual capacity. The collective wisdom in the room probably far outshines and outweighs that of one individual. Now again, I'm looking for a specific situation, and maybe you give me a modern example with some Gen Zs included. How does this play out? It's a real situation. You've entered the room. Birbals are there, but you're the Akbar who enters now. And you now need to take a decision in quick time without offending the individuals in the room and coming across as being dominant.
Yeah, so to me, the bolder the decision or the groundbreaking, the change, the more authority you have to exercise. Because nobody else has seen that. It's only the leader who's basically saying, look, this is the way it's going to work. And I am going to...
Having said that, just again to promote the debate, the bolder the decision, the greater the change impact, the greater the buy-in that's needed from your executive team.
In that case, it will never happen.
You're going to take
the bolder decision. The bolder the decision, the groundbreaking, the change, you try to get a buy-in, you will always water down the decision to a level where it becomes an incremental change. And I was going to say that incremental change can have a group think, where you say, okay, board, invite, 10,000 people, thoughts, summarize, vision statement, all these things. A bolder one, I mean, if you want to create a SpaceX, you can't get a room full of people and say, let's create
maybe
SpaceX.
Controversial to pick. Operation Sindoor was one man's decision or the decision of a team that sat in this room thinking about the consequences of that decision? What do you think happened? I'm just promoting Operation Sindoor. How do you think that decision gotten taken? Because you're saying the bolder the impact, the greater the change. There must have been some healthy debate on the pros and cons, and the Minister of Defense and the chiefs would have all discussed whether or not.
I work in that industry quite a bit, and I don't think this was a decision of more than 3 people.
Okay,
fair
enough.
I mean, there's no way that...
Fair enough.
So, again, I mean, most of
if
us...
If it would have been a decision of 20, 25 people, I think Operation Sindoor would have started 6 months later and lasted 2 years.
Sure, fair enough. It's a fair point. CP, you were saying.
I was re-emphasizing that all of us have been in situations where we had to take some decisions. But that decision, the buck stops at me, is a kind of a decision making. There is no other way of decision making. That is the point I'm making.
So I agree with both of you, but those are very few decisions where you take those bold decisions. You go in with some path breaking, For example, personally, I've taken a lot of decisions where the entire executive team said no. I took those decisions and they are lasting out. Not only we implemented, every other Big Four implemented after 2-3 years. So I think the point is not that. The point is, when we look in a normal situation, how do leaders need to behave? Even your Steve Jobs example, CP, Steve Jobs said, why do you hire smart people? I mean, one of the questions he asked, why do you hire smart people? So while we have seen those anecdotes of his taking those decisions when the event is happening or that is happening, a lot of the making of Apple was done by a lot of smart people around, and they built what they built. Take NVIDIA now. I mean, somebody said NVIDIA just now. So it's again built with, people coming forward and building it out, kind of.
So I think again, Richard, we all are saying smart people will also rally behind a smart leader. I mean, you can't say कि मैं democratic leader हूँ, मैं सिर्फ कहानियाँ सुनूंगा बैठ के.
No, George Orwell was definitely right. That I think.
No, hold on.
Coming back to George Orwell, all men are equal. Some are more equal than others. It was built with the philosophy that ultimately somebody has to put their neck on the line. And
no, hold on. The smart people, they are required everywhere, right? But there comes the part of execution.
Sure.
You have a bold vision and a groundbreaking change to drive. Authority probably sets a strong direction, and then you need incredibly smart people to execute it. Without them, you're not going to achieve the result that you said. You say, look, I'm going to make a smart, iPhone, whenever he said that. Or, when Musk said, the rocket is going to land back. Okay, impossible feat. But then he couldn't stop at that, right? Then he needs incredibly smart people. And if you read the biography, you can sense and see how many people he's hired, which were just, amazing physicists and whatnot and engineers who made it happen. That's where the smart people come in. Incremental change, it's all democratic. Then okay, you're basically saying, okay, 2%, 5%.
Let's agree to disagree on points made here, and that's the point of having the debate, and move to now authority. And we've just seen that there is a trade-off. I think this conversation is so interesting because these are dilemmas that need to be reconciled, and they will always remain dilemmas. They're not problems that can be solved. They will continue to coexist, and in what proportion you utilize empathy and authority, finally to create the impact. Now, we did see in Anuranjita's slide, if I can borrow, there was, of course, creativity and fulfillment, and the spiritual masters, when they speak of impact, they only speak of happiness. I think more or less collectively they may use different words to describe that, peace or happiness, but ultimately the objective can't be limited to profit. And so that brings me the question of impact, and specifically impact. Here again, I see an inherent trade-off between how likable you are as a leader, or people have used popular or likable, and how effective are you as a leader. So have you been in a situation where you've taken unpopular decisions, and that unpopular decision was the wrong decision? That's what I want to see, uncover. And what are the consequences of that? Let's start with you, CP. Unpopular decision, you went on it on your own, it was bold, but it was, in hindsight, now you reflect on it and say, yeah, I don't think that was the right decision I took.
Again, I leave it for open conversation here. There is no human being which has taken only right decisions.
Correct.
Number one. Number two is, if I am an effective leader, that means I'm also hopefully an effective communicator. If I'm an effective communicator, I will admit to my mistakes also. If I admit to my mistakes, people will understand that I took a decision with a certain set of assumptions. So for example, as a CEO of Tech Mahindra, I bought a company in networking business. The business didn't work out for me, but I did not hide behind that decision trying to justify it. I admitted my mistake and moved on. So as far as I am concerned, that it's not authority, it's a responsibility.
Great word.
And as responsibility, it is for you to, while people give you the credit, you should be the first one to take responsibility of the wrong decisions that you have taken. And if you communicate, you are again showing your integrity, building trust, and building relationship. It doesn't matter whether it is a board situation or whether it is with your junior most employee.
You know what? So there's a wisdom gem hidden here. By being empathetic, you're building trust. That trust gives you the permission to act decisively and on your own, which can then create the impact that you so believe you can within an organization. So actually you're looking at a multiplier effect between empathy, authority, and impact. When you look at a formulaic approach of leadership effectiveness, perhaps that could be one. Richard, your closing comments, and then I'm going to open it to the floor. With your permission, we're just going to go to the audience then.
So closing on this topic?
Yeah, specifically on this trade-off between being popular and...
So first thing I learned at least was leadership is not a popularity contest. And not everybody is going to like you. Every leader who takes 10 decisions, 3 are going to go wrong and maybe terribly wrong. 3 are just going to be neutral, I mean have zero impact or whatever. And the rest 4, 5 may be the good decisions you'll take. But that doesn't mean you don't take the decision. I would say you don't take the decision. It is not about being popular, but it's being right, and it's about being doing it for the good of the greater good of the organization. He spoke of, Muninder spoke about higher purpose. Personally, I've practiced higher purpose for most of my career, where you think beyond. And what is higher purpose? Is when you find the why of your life. Where I describe it as, if your salary is your current account, your higher purpose is your capital account. And if you can understand that, and if you understand the why of your life, I think a lot of things will get sorted out personally. But I think it's important to take, CP spoke about one acquisition. I can tell you in our consulting world, all acquisitions have failed. All. And all acquisitions have failed, and the person who did the acquisition never made money. So who made money was the team which came, made the money, but
So Richard made money. That's the moral of the story.
No. So I'll tell you, all acquisitions have failed. So I remember we were doing a very, very big acquisition when we were at KPMG. Very marquee, this thing. And at the last minute, and we went through the discussion. Let me tell you, I went through all the discussions, everything. At the last minute, I said, no, we are not going to do it. It was the most unpopular decision because the team was fully saying we'll do it, but it didn't happen. But in the long run, it was right. I mean, it proved in this case to be the right decision. It could have been the wrong decision also, Nishchae.
Okay, so with that 5 minutes question and answers, open it up to the floor. Please introduce yourself, be sharp in your question, and it can go to anyone because we're going to keep it free flowing. Yes, please. Floor is open. Yeah, there will be a method to the madness, I'm sure. Questions? Any comments? Questions? Agree? Disagree?
Nishchae, you're so charming, nobody wants it.
I've never had this. It's your lucky day. Okay, so with that, let me just say a few things. One, empathy does not create soft leaders. It actually creates stronger organizations. That's the first big takeaway, is that through compassion, understanding, kindness, you actually earn the trust of your people to then be decisive. Accountability and authority and responsibility all go hand in hand. And I think, you touched upon a very important word, responsibility, borrowing from Spider-Man, right? With power comes responsibility. And clearly that's something that we must take in our stride. And then finally, if you really look at authority, empathy, and impact, all coexist. And what's fascinating is we just need to know when to dial up and dial down depending upon the situation. With that, I want to thank Richard, Rekhy. I want to thank CP and Ashish for a wonderful discussion and allowing me the permission to be provocative. Thank you once again.
So can I request you to be on stage for a few more minutes? If you can take your seats, please. Please, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nishchae. Thank you, esteemed panelists, for the very enriching discussion. Up next is a launch of a white paper, because Anu did mention when she started that research is our backbone. And I think as we celebrate leadership and innovation tonight, it's time to spotlight on powerful enabler of talent and no guesses, coaching and mentoring. They are no longer optional in my own experience. It's a necessity, and more than leadership development, it's about one-on-one coaching or mentoring, if you will, whether it's internal or external. The VS white paper we unveiled today captures it all: the market size estimates, key growth drivers, future trends, and the imperatives that organizations must embrace. With that, I invite on stage Anu. A few more distinguished guests that we have today, would like to request them to please join us on stage to unveil the white paper. Mr. S.Y. Siddiqui, can I have you on stage, please? Thank you. Alex. Prachi. Mr. Akhil Busrai, if he's in the room. And Kuresh Irani. Kurush. Mr. Akhil Busrai, sir, please. A big round of applause, please. As a next step, we will be sharing with you the PDF copies of the research paper. Nishchae, if you can come forward with the straight line for us. Thank you. Thank you so much. Anu, if I can request you and the panel members to be on stage to honor them, please. To honor the panel.
Yes, of course. Yes. You want to come out? Felicitate the panelists.
Yes, that's right. sir. CP sir, just Anu's here. A big round of applause for the panel members, please. Ashish, if I can request you to please step forward. Thank you. A big round of applause, please. Yeah. Mr. CP Gurnani. Mr. Richard Rekhy. And wonderful moderation by, and Nishchae, 5th edition for you as well, Nishchae Suri. A big round of applause, please. Thank you so much.